Well, good day, folks. It's another rainy, nasty, miserable, cold, windy day here. So I'm out in the garage again because I can't go to the woods. And some of you may have seen the short I put up yesterday where I used the hobo knife to open a can of beans and cook it on my hobo stove. Well, the old hobo stove has seen better days. It's getting pretty burned out and rusty, and well, doesn't have much life left to her. She's getting kind of dangerous. So I think it's time to make another one. I could probably salvage this piece, but we're going to do this. Why not go from scratch and film it in case you're all interested in it. So we'll chuck that one aside. So some things you will need. You will need a larger size can. Now, this could be like a coffee can, maybe a big tomato can, something like that. So let's see. I should get a ruler and measure this. Okay, so this one comes in at about, pretty close to 6 inches. And then you will need a smaller basic soup can or whatever. This is a dog food can. Comes in at about 4 inches. And you're going to cut everything up so the one can fits through the side of the other can. Some tools you may need. What I'm going to use, just going to use a little coping saw to cut the bottom off of this can because it has to be open from both ends. A marker will come in handy because we're going to trace the outline of this can on that can so we know where to cut. If you have a church key can opener, that might come in handy for creating some vent holes and whatnot. We'll see how we do. You can drill holes too. Some kind of tin snips. And I found these little gadgets rooting through my stash of odds and ends. There's some kind of a brass hanger. I thought they might be neat to use as a foot on the side of the can. Drop 4 of those on, because that will give the benefit of raising the can off of the surface. And that's good because if you're working on a cold surface, you don't want the cold, say, of the cold ground, frozen ground, sucking the heat out of your can, because that's going to impact the time it takes to cook. And plus, they'll give a little more stability to the can. Say you wanted to use a larger pan or something on it. So I'm going to get things set up, and we will get to work. Okay, so I started cutting the bottom of this can off with my coping saw. You could use a cutoff wheel, a Dremel with a little cutoff wheel. You could start it and work it the rest of the way around with tin snips. This is going to give me a fairly clean cut, so I'm just going to cut through with this. And I apologize. I'll mute the volume on this because the noise is kind of nasty. Okay, so we now have a through channel. Advisable to, just for safety's sake, take some sandpaper and kind of round to smooth out those edges. You can see we've got a little bit of a burr there. You can do that with a Dremel, sandpaper by hand, however you want to do it. I'm just smoothing out the edges, taking away some of those burrs. Whenever you're working with something like this, cutting tin or cutting fine metal, always be mindful that you're going to be dealing with sharp edges. And it certainly wouldn't hurt to wear some gloves. Okay, that should do us. Now, we want to decide where to mount our channel. Now, you're going to see spots on the can where they seam the metal together. You want to avoid that because that's just going to be a little bit tougher to cut through. So we'll put that to the back. Now, you don't want your can to go completely through at the base. You want to leave a little bit of room for ashing so that as wood burns, the ashes can fall down to the bottom. So we'll go, roughly an inch up, we'll say. Maybe right about there. So then you're just going to mark out roughly what you need to cut for the can to go through. Now, this isn't going to be a completely circular mark because you're dealing with convex surface. Now, we're going to want to cut that out. So to do that, you can start with a drill. Perhaps you could work it in with a knife or something like that. I think I'm just going to go pop over to the drill press, drop a couple holes in here, and that'll give me room to work with some tin snips. So we'll be right back. Okay, so I dropped a couple holes in the can with the drill press, and now I'm just working along with my tin snips. This is tedious. Don't expect to cut a perfect hole. It's not absolutely necessary. You don't need a complete awesome tight seal. You just need to make sure you don't cut the hole too big to actually get the can in there, because if your hole's too big, your can's not going to fit tight. Anyways, I will finish this and then get back to you. Okay, there's our hole cut out. I took some sandpaper and knocked off just any extra burrs or anything. So there we have it. Like I say, it's not a perfect tight fit. You'll be hard pressed to get that. Now, before we go any further and seat our can, I want to look at putting feet on the bottom of this thing. So I've got 4 of these brass hanger things. And maybe that'll be the best spot. Now I've got just some little screws that I found that will fit. I'm very big on repurposing things. So if we mark our holes, let me grab a smaller marker. Now, I'm not desperately concerned about precision. I'm just hitting the 4 compass points. Okay, and now we'll get a punch and punch those out. Okay, so just using a small nail, and just going to punch those holes out. And there we have 1 foot. 4 more to go. I'll get back to you when that's done. And the one thing I didn't notice with these when I picked them up is that they didn't all go in the same direction or have the same angled bend. So we get some going one way, some going the other way, but it should still work. So there we have our feet. Nice and stable. And it gives us, I'll go to inch and a half clearance from the ground. Now, if I wanted to go the extra mile, I could get some shrink wrap plastic tubing, put that on here, shrink it on so that would be an extra layer of insulation. But I don't have any of that at the moment. Alrighty. So next, we will look at our can. Now, you're not just going to have the can go in like so. Because you're going to block up a lot of your channel here. So what we're going to do is cut the can here and here along the top so that we can then fold that back up. And that will secure this can to that can. Will help seal up any gaps we have there, but also have us an opening here on the top so that we're capturing all of that flame, just not what spits out this little end here. So we will get to work on that. So I'm just going to mark roughly here where I want to make my cuts. I'm not going to cut along here, but that's going to be my fold line. I'm just going to pre-crease these so that'll be easier to lift them into place once they're inside the can. In fact, I think we're going to take an angle off here too, because we really only need from about here down to hold our wood. So we'll fold these back. Now, before we put that in place, we might want to consider some vent holes for this can. Wouldn't hurt to have a couple in the back here. So that's where our church key will come in handy. Don't want to go right to the base, because remember, we do want an ash pan there. Probably should have done this before I put my feet on. There's 4 vent holes in the back. And then you could put some around the top if you wanted to. That could potentially allow some of your flame to come out and blossom around the sides. We'll try that. There we go. Just flatten those down. Okay. Now, let's get our can in there. There. Now, one last little feature I'm making here. I'm just making for some short pieces of wire. You could use coat hanger for that. I just don't happen to have any. But with these, we can make a small hot rest. Okay, I'm going to set up for a test run. You can already hear I have the door open to let the smoke out, because you can hear that lovely rain. So let me get things set up, and we'll get right back to you. Alrighty. So sorry, not the best setup in the world, but we've got a baton down, a little bit of kindling, and I figured if we're going to go old school, let's go really old school. And I scraped up some fat wood here, have some birch bark, and let's see if we can get a fire going. Yeah. Now, if I was outside and I could work with the wind, this would work like a rocket stove. I would angle the opening towards the wind so it would do much the work of a bellows. So I'll have to be my own wind for today. And the thing to remember as you use a stove like this, you constantly have to feed your wood in as it burns. Now, where our wire comes into play is we can now feed this through our vent holes here. Like so. Then, if we have something smaller than the diameter of the large can, such as a cup, we can fit that on there. So we want to make a cup of coffee. There we go. Now these are great for heating up a can of beans like I did on that short. I often use it to make char cloth. I can just set a little can on top of there and use it to make char cloth. I think I did a video on that a long time ago. And there we have it, a new Hobo Stove. So, goodbye to the old and hello to the new. Now, one thing I should mention when you do this, use as I mentioned in the disclaimer on that video, a lot of modern cans, particularly food cans, will use a coating or a lining on the inside of the can, like a plastic or whatever. And anytime you heat plastic, it can give off residue, chemical residue. And so make sure you do a little burn in on your can if it's not clean. These are some old cans I had, so particularly the large one, I had used that actually to burn stuff before. So in a well ventilated area, give it a burn out, get rid of all those chemicals, and then you're good to go. So I'm going to sit back and wait for my water to heat up and maybe make a cup of coffee. Good way to make soup too. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you have any questions, suggestions, because there's a million and one ways you can do this. I've made them a lot of different ways. Just drop those in the comments below. I'll be glad to take any suggestions, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. So, y'all take care. Have a great day. Yeah, I really hope the sun's shining where you are, because we've had 2 weeks of rain, and I'm getting a little tired of it. But at least it gets me out in the garage making silly videos. Anyway, take care. Have a great weekend. Get out in the woods. If the sun is shining where you are, and take a knife with you. Might just come in handy. Y'all take care.